Hello, this is Dr. Maya, and our conversation is about adrenal chronic fatigue. And we are talking about causes for adrenal fatigue as well as treatment choices. So today's conversation will be about the perfectionism as a cause of an adrenal fatigue. Now, it can be a cause or it can be an emotional component that is directly related to adrenal fatigue, because it can really cause it, and then it will continue contributing to it, to the perpetuation of the fatigue. So in the previous conversations, we talked about an emotional trauma being a cause and also a contributing factor to it. And I want to say just right now that there are many causes. That's not only emotional trauma or perfectionism, and I'll go over it in my follow-up videos. It can be an infection, it can be postpartum, and many other things. But today, let's concentrate on perfectionism. This topic is close to my heart because that was, I think, one of the major contributing factors to my adrenal fatigue 15 years ago. And at my clinic, I see many patients who have adrenal fatigue and they are perfectionists. So I call us recovering perfectionists. So what is a perfectionism and how to distinguish the desire to do things well and perfectionism? So there is nothing wrong with wanting to do things very well. In fact, it is a good thing to do, right? So you have standards, you have high expectations, high standards, and the result that you want to give in any area of your life, you want it to be good. And it can be cultural, generational, it can be raised in a family, or you could have a role model. So all is good until something strange can happen, that everything that you do is not being good enough. And if it's not being good enough, it creates an expectation stress on you. So it's not an emotional trauma, but it is a high emotional distress when something that you are doing is not quite up to your expectations. So how stress is being created? Let's think about it from a brain-wise point of view. So there is no way evolutionary that you are just motivated to do something. Motivation usually happens because of the stress. So if something is going wrong, or there is a hunger, you're hungry, you have to go hunt a dinosaur or a mammoth, or if something wants to attack you. And at that time, your hypothalamus in your head, it's a part of the brain, receives that stress signal that you perceived. It's a perceived stress. It can be real stress, or it can be perceived stress. It also can be a memory of a stress, and expectations also a form of a stress. So your hypothalamus receives that signal of a perceived stress, and it signals your pituitary gland to signal adrenal cortex to start pumping up cortisol, your stress hormone, that will continue pumping up and until it has a desired effect of shutting down many things in your body, such as your digestion and your immune system and your hormones and all of that stuff. And what it will do, it will spike your glucose and you will go into fight and flight mode. Pituitary gland also will shut down metabolism and reproductive function for that moment. Now, for the short-term stress, it's great. So say, for example, if you have to do, even if we're not talking about running away from the saber-toothed tiger, but say you have a short-term project and you have to do it, and you do it and you completed it, now you're celebrating, everything is back to normal. What happens with the perfectionism is that it's never good enough. So it becomes a form of a chronic stress. And let's face it, there is no way we can complete our tasks to complete perfection. Complete perfection just does not exist in the world. There is a perfection in imperfect. And it's not about it's just good enough and I have to let it go. But no, it is about natural law that things are like a flowers, they bloom and then they wither, they die. Same thing with everything. Life goes in cycles. But in a perfectionist's mind, we are in control of the situation so much that we are completely in control of the outcome. But life doesn't work like this, and we are not completely in control of the outcome. So that creates kind of a brain hijack, this kind of a perception. It creates a loop when the dopamine, it is constantly pumped. And if the dopamine is constantly pumped from your neurons, then you want to be constantly motivated, but at the same time, you will constantly exhaust yourself until the moment when you are so exhausted that you are beating yourself up for being exhausted, for not doing everything perfectly, and so on. So the expectations become chronic, and then expectations become your identity. So you tie your results to your identity. And that is the most dangerous thing, to start over-identifying yourself with something that you are doing. Either it's your career, or it's your role in a family, or in the very high-performing perfectionist people. It's everything. So we try to put together all our identities together, and they are very much tied to the results that we produce, not even for people outside of, but it's in our head. And and then this perfectionism becomes generalized. Everything has to be perfect, and what result we get is always not good enough. And in the perceptions of yourself, you might feel that you are never good enough, which can bring a sense of shame and sense of inadequacy. So from outside, perfectionist looks really amazing. They have job done, they accomplish things, they get rewards, awards, all of that. But inside, it's never good enough. So it becomes a pathology, really, if you think about that. Now, I'm talking about extreme case, and it's not always extreme. So sometimes it's like that extreme, but sometimes it is in the certain area of the life. Now, it can stem from the childhood trauma, from parents who have a very high expectations, or from parents who have no expectations. Sometimes in the families with one or both people being perfectionists, and there are two kids, one becomes an extreme perfectionist and another one becomes a beach bum. So they don't want to do anything because they rebel. And if you have a trait of a perfectionist, or have known somebody who is, you probably can trace it back to some events in your life, or some family, or anything else that caused you to be like that. Now, it has its rewards, but when it starts affecting your life in the way that you can never really relax unless everything is done, like you cannot go to the beach and walk around, you cannot go to the mall if your dishes are not washed, or you can, but then you're going to be thinking about it all the time, because in your mind, you are that omnipotent person who can do absolutely everything. And I can tell it with a certainty and confidence, because I consider myself being a recovering perfectionist, and it doesn't mean that I did everything perfectly. I wanted to, I really did, and because I was stressing out and overloading myself with tasks, most of the time I didn't. From outside it looked good, but from inside there was always more to do, always things to do better. So one thing to start doing to counteract that perfectionism loop is to create smart goals, and to really look what is important, what are your values, what is a priority of your values, what are the smart goals that you can do that also include self-care, including yourself, and then evaluating what is it in your life that you can let go a little bit of. And what I mean is let go when your mind is free from that as well. So if you are a chronic perfectionist, by this time you accumulated a lot in your life that you have to do very, very well. So there is a lot to do. It starts with awareness, to identify what identities you have and to identify what SMART goals you can put, because when we generalize, then all the goals become general. And having SMART goals, that they are time bound, they are achievable, they are measurable, and so on. And also have a patience with yourself. I work with many people who exhibit traits of perfectionism. I have a lot of material on that. I was thinking of creating a course on that, or some sort of a program online. So if you are interested in that, please comment, let me know. I will put it together, we'll go through it together, and we will figure out what to do and how to make our lives better when it is actually in the open and we stop being exhausted all the time. I conquered it a few years ago, and even though I'm working a lot, I'm working hard, and I want my things to be good, and I'm, it is really not possible to do all the time. So I learned to celebrate my victories, and I learned to grieve my failures for just a little bit, maybe 2-3 minutes, maybe a day, and then get up and start again and forgive myself. So please let me know if you would be interested in this. And if you know a perfectionist in your life, please forward them this video, and maybe they will learn something about themselves. So that was a little chat about perfectionism, and I will continue the series about other causes of chronic adrenal fatigue, adrenal fatigue. So all the fatigue that is undiagnosed, misdiagnosed, and is creating emotional and physical distress in your life. So this is Dr. Maya, and I will see you next time.